She's just the weak link. So what do you tell her? If you just tell us the names of the other witches, we'll go. It's a conspiracy theory. One becomes three, three becomes six, six becomes 4,000 women. The majority of people executed in the documents are men. And it may be examples of old pagan folk practices that were still being practiced in sort of the hinterland of Iceland and Russia and Lithuania, where there may have been sort of some surviving paganism stuff kind of lingering, and that got wrapped up in the witch trials as well. So more men were executed in Iceland and Russia than women, which is interesting.
Largely stray.
What people often don't understand is that they didn't often target midwives. Midwives were productive members of society. They worked alongside priests and doctors. So it wasn't healer women, typically not, very rarely. The biggest predictor for being accused of witchcraft is poverty. That's the one thing we see across the board. That's the predictor, is poverty. And because again, what they're being accused and convicted of is being members of a heretical sect. Sorcery is still a sin, and men are practicing sorcery all the time at this time. So, all kinds of angelic language stuff. You have Agrippa writing 3 books of occult philosophy. You have tons of men, at some level, publicly engaging in sorcery. Faust, Paracelsus, they're living in the height of witch trials, and they're more or less able to exist with some problems. And John Dee was invited by the Inquisition to come to run with them, and he politely refused because that was a good idea. Bruno, of course, was burned alive in 1600. So you can't run the risk of the Inquisition, but basically, if you confess, you can be adjudicated because you've committed a sin. You're not a heretic. The difference is these women are considered heretics. And so once you confess to membership in a heretical sect, and explicitly a Christian heretical sect, at that point, you can be turned over to the secular authorities, and that's when you can hanged or burned. Some places typically burn, some places hang. So most in England, they do mostly hanging there.
And it's heavy.
It's a mental illness. Melancholy. It's where we get melancholy. But it doesn't just mean in best time. It doesn't mean just sadness. But you notice that some of them were talking to themselves. He was a physician. He was basically inventing psychiatry by interviewing women. And what he said they in common? They're all women. He actually went down scientifically, interviewed these women. I work intellectually in the tradition of Western esotericism, but part of the bug in the future of what I do is that some of these books are so rare that if I want to get access to them, I have to physically get them. There just aren't copies. And so a book like the 3 books of occult philosophy, the most important book on occult philosophy ever written, published originally in 1533, Agrippa could have been arrested and killed. But, this guy is defending, successfully defending the witch, which is very dangerous, by the way. And lawyers also shared with witchcraft cases. Did. So it's a really heroic guy, but he also wrote the definitive book on what we now call occult philosophy, which is the idea that human dignity is such that before we fell from grace and the whole Adam and Eve thing, we had a property called dignitas. And dignitas is a kind of inherent value, that the human being was inherently worthy of dignity. It's a big deal now. We talk about human dignity in the Human Declaration of Rights. Agrippa thinks that dignity comes because we're made in the image of God. And he thinks that we can get it back. We can actually reclaim our dignity, a full degree of dignity, and we do it through practicing magic. Because magic is the power by which basically God created the universe. But the Sefer Yetzirah, one of the most important foundational works of the Kabbalah, since the first printing.
So you are a curator of rare texts, and you also sell some, but how do you find these books?
So it's a fun kind of detective work. Sometimes I'll get a call, and someone's like, "Yeah, I inherited a collection, and this book is in the thing," or they'll go to auction. A library will be dissolved. For instance, the General Theological Library in New York was recently dissolved. A lot of institutions are just going broke, frankly, which is very sad. And one of the ways that they can justify making a good bit of money is that so many of these books are digitized. There's no reason to go specifically to the General Theological Library to look at it. So it's difficult to cure that even when they go to auction, people don't know what they're looking at. And so part of the way that I understand my career, one big part of it is these books have been systematically repressed, just like these traditions have. Agrippa's book was directly targeted by the Bibles were meant to be read, passed on, they were meant to survive. Thomas Aquinas' works were meant to survive. It's no surprise that we have lots of copies of them, because they never went into the fire. This went into the fire. This book was actively targeted for destruction by the church.
Well, what specifically is that book, and what is it dated to, roughly?
So this is Agrippa's Three Books of Occult Philosophy. It was printed in 1533. In fact, we know from the ending it was actually printed in July of 1533. But the book was being printed in 1532. We know that because in some of Agrippa's letters, he complains to the local archbishop that the Inquisition has kicked the door in and halted the printing of the book. And Agrippa reminds them, though the Archbishop of Cologne invited me here to publish this. The book is the foundational text of what is called the occult philosophy. And the occult philosophy is the idea that the world, the apparent world, is not the only world. That there's an apparent world that we can see with our five senses, and there's also a hidden world that God has put into creation. Hidden in Latin is just occulta, the occult world. And Agrippa believes that we can harness those occult powers, and the ethereal powers, and we can harness those powers, and by harnessing those powers, we become godlike again. Our dignity is restored to us. And so for everything from, he has in here the alphabet of the angels, because we should be able to write like the angels. They have their own alphabet, we can write like them. And so Agrippa lays out, one of the reasons why it's controversial is because part of what it has to happen in this process, and these really beautiful evocative images of sigils associated with the planets by which we can gain planetary power. And so the planets radiate energy. We can capture that energy and use it for various kinds of magical workings. But one of the things that's controversial about this book, there's many controversial this book, obviously, but one of the most controversial things is that Agrippa thinks that divine illumination is a thing that we can, in fact, induce. So mystical states, so we go back to William James earlier, they're passive. What Agrippa says is they don't have to be passive. We don't have to wait around for God to illuminate us. We can meet God halfway, and when we meet God halfway, it sort of shorts the circuit, and we get divine illumination. We can induce divine illumination. Now, on the one hand, that sounds great, because it now means that, one, you can actively become a mystic, and two, you can kind of do it on purpose and make it happen. But the church's worry is that it sounds like you're forcing the hand of God. And that was obviously a big, big no-no. And so this book was immediately eradicated. It was immediately declared heresy. It mixes Kabbalah, it mixes alchemy, it mixes basically
alphabet of
the angels alphabet, yeah.
What was it? The what alphabet?
So it's sometimes referred to, there's an alphabet of the witches, but there's also an alphabet in here called, sometimes referred to as the alphabet of the witches. The Theban alphabet, which is now a big deal in Wicca. In the Wicca religion, they use it. So they can find the alphabet. It's in book 2.
Which is this book? How would it go forth?
So on the open market, it's a good question. One hasn't appeared on the open market. I have 3 of them. There's also a bibliographic weirdness about this book. It kind of gets into some interesting territory because the first edition, we think of first editions as all being the same. When you get a first edition, the first printing should be the same. I've gotten my hands on three copies of this, which is extremely rare. They're all different. So the question is, which one's the first?
Right.
And did Agrippa hide things? Like, are there things that he's changed so that only if you know, that there'll be things hidden in these books?
Well, the Da Vinci Code situation.
It's really weird. Like, I'll give you one example of this, where there are mysteries in this book that we still have not totally figured out. For instance, there's a famous image here of the dignity of man as spelled out through occult relationships to the planets. So these symbols all make a good bit of sense to us, at least if you've studied this stuff long enough, you kind of know what's going on here. If you know how to read these texts, they're quite strange, but you can get some sense of what's going on here. But as we flip through to the end, we get to a diagram where we're again shown these mathematical occult proportions of the human being, but now there's these numbers. No one knows these numbers, and it's a mystery. And I've worked on it. People have guessed. We don't know. So the book has mysteries left in it. So not only is it about occult philosophy, but there's actually things hiding in the book. I even think that there's something hiding in the printing process. I think Agrippa has hidden things in this book, and that you would never know it because the book is so rare that you would never get 3 copies, 5 copies in one room. You might find 1 copy in a library here, 1 copy there. But to get several of them, I have several of them, and now I've been looking at them like, hold on.
Cross-reference maybe.
Yeah, look at usually like, why is that part in French here and in German in this version? Why is this part surrounded with a Da Vinci Code thing and try to figure out what's going on with this stuff?
So these go for tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes, these old texts.
Yeah, because again, it's not just that they're old, but they're rare to a magnitude unique to them because they were hunted. This book, if you call this book, you could be prosecuted, the book could be destroyed.
You were mentioning before.
Is that one, they're esoteric and mystical. They're already dissimulating. They're already saying one thing and meaning another. But secondly, even the printing process belies the fact that there are mysteries in these books.
Yeah.
The physical book hides something.
What do you think it could be hiding?
There could be blinds. In the magic tradition, there's a custom by which you give someone the magical experiment or an alchemy. You tell someone to do something. Only an adept would know, so that you don't let everybody know, right? This is a printed book. Everybody can buy a copy of this, but should everybody know everything? Maybe not. So what do? You hide blinds. You put blinds in the text to mislead people on purpose, and only people initiated in the mysteries will know. Oh, no, you can't. That's not the way that sigil. That's not right. This is the codes. Yeah, and there's just some weird things like there's like a little woodcut here. It's like, why is it there in the middle of the top of the page? So, yeah, it makes
What is the alphabet?
Yeah, let me find this. These books have a mind of their own in some ways. You can hear the paper. It's like a very thick kind of paper, and they don't naturally want to open to the pages you want them to open to. So let me see. It's back in book 2. It's also funny because you can see where it's been opened repeatedly. Whoever had this copy at some point really was interested in these sigils to do this magic. So this was owned very so likely by a practicing sorcerer. But yeah, the alphabets are here.
Endlessly fascinating.
There we go, there they are. So we have those kabbalistic tables, and then here Agrippa tells us, right, that this is what is called the Theban alphabet. This becomes the alphabet of the witches in the Wicca tradition. So it doesn't show up for the first time in this book, but it shows up in his teacher for the first time. The angels, which is interesting, is that this type of alphabet actually goes back to ancient Egypt. So we can trace a magical connection all the way from 1533 all the way back to the Roman Empire, that these magical symbols are continuously in use.
You think connected it also like the Eleusinian mysteries? Or
not specifically to the Eleusinian mysteries, but certainly continuity to the Greek mysteries in general, especially those in Egypt. Here's another alphabet of the angels.
Alphabet of the angels. And so was this an actually like a used language or for writing or subset of practitioners?
It's a good question. We don't know where these alphabets come from. They seem to show up in magical, and specifically in Jewish magic. They pop up in Jewish magic. They're still dominant in Jewish magic today. You can go into any Jewish bookshop and you can get a copy of the Book of Raziel that contains all kinds of amulets.
Does that also like, it makes me think of the Sefer Yitzhak, which has got so much encoding and interesting meaning.
Yeah, so this book references this book.
Interesting.
Agrippa knows this book quite well, and so they're talking to each other.
Okay.
Which is a neat connection.
So what is that book? Do you feel?
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to show now?
No, it's just a really fascinating book. And when you ask sort of like, how much does a book like this cost? It really ranges.
Yeah.
I'm holding on to this right now because I want to hunt down the mystery. But I think this will eventually make it onto the market, and it'll fetch 5 figures. Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. Which again is unsurprising, because it's an incredibly rare book and incredibly important in the history of this material. Sefer Yetzirah right here. This is the first printing. This is Mantua, 1562. So this is the first time this ever appears in print. Of course, it circulated in manuscript prior to that, but this is the first time that it appears in print. It's a really lovely edition. What's really neat about it, this specific copy, is that there's a Kabbalistic prayer specifically for the study of Sefer Yetzirah, the book that's unique to this copy.
What is that for people that don't know?
So Sefer Yetzirah is a Kabbalistic book allegedly written by Abraham, the patriarch Abraham. Your knowledge may vary about the historical accurateness of that, but it describes the mechanism by which God created the world. So in the Bible, God creates the heavens and the earth through speech, right? So when I say let there be light, nothing happens because I'm just some schmuck. But when God says yehi or, there be light, and then there was light.
Yeah.
So God creates through speech, right? That's a core idea in the again alleges that it is the mechanism by which God created the heavens and the earth, and is analyzing the Hebrew language to find secrets in the language that are metaphysical secrets, and the power of the language to transform the world. So the most important thing that this book lays out, and there's cosmological stuff in here. You can see toward the end there are these great cosmological diagrams that show the nature of reality and how God has structured the universe like a language. And one of the most interesting things that's detailed in the commentaries of this book is the idea that, look, God and human beings share in common that we both have creative speech. Now, our creative speech has been significantly lessened by the fall, by Adam and Eve falling. Our sin has made our speech not as effective as God's. But if you're righteous enough, then you could do something. And the Gemara, the Talmud says, if you're righteous enough, you could create olamim, worlds. But you can't create worlds, but what can you create? You can create people. And this is the myth of the golem. You can take a lump of clay, shape it into a human being, and through speech, which is laid out in this book, you can bring that creature to life. And so the golem emerges in Sefer Yetzirah. So, again, fabulously rare book. Jewish books are rare just because of the history of anti-Semitism, unfortunately. And this mystical text is printed for the first time. And it's interesting because in the history of me studying esotericism, the first esoteric book that I ever got was a copy of Sefer Yetzirah, given to me by a Catholic priest, no less. Father Brian of blessed memory. I used to hang out with him after school, me and my friend David, and he was the only person in the neighborhood where we could just ask anything. We could talk about God, we could talk about religion, philosophy, and he just let us talk about whatever we wanted. And he would, such a grown up that was smart and cool. And I remember one time he handed me a copy of this book. I still have it. And he was like, your ancestors wrote this. Maybe you can make more sense of it than I can. And it was a copy of Sefer Yetzirah. And so I think sometimes about him putting that in my hand. A Catholic priest reaching out to a Jewish kid to put a mystical Jewish text in my hands, right? And then I think
When you get inside your body when you're looking at these ancient texts,
it's you talk about the feeling of the numinous, that these are survivors. I'm a steward of this book. I think what Indiana Jones said, right, that we're just passing through history. This is history. And so when I take this book, it's sacred to me. It's survived unimaginable things, and therefore my task is to, both in terms of the contents, make it as available as possible for as many people who want to learn about it, but also as a physical object to treat with the reverence that it's traveled through time, it's reached me, and my job is to get it through my lifetime to where it needs to go. It's not mine. I'm the custodian of it. Yeah, but at the end of the day,
It's just
my job is to
fine.
review books.
You are so wonderful.
And I think
Oh,
the capitalistic was mine part of history, and that's your job as a custodian. You don't own it. History owns it. You just have to be in possession of it.
Wild, man. I would love to come to your library and just nerd out with you for weeks on end. What is this? So what's this third one?
Also very important in the history of what we work on is called the Hermetic tradition, the Hermetic tradition covered, right? And the inventor of alchemy, he's the teacher of Moses. I mean, you go to the cathedral in Siena. If you ever go to Siena, go to the cathedral. In the middle of the cathedral, there's an image of Hermes Trismegistus teaching Moses.
Wow.
So the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus is important. But this text, the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus were largely lost, at least in the Western world, until the 15th century, where they were brought over by refugees fleeing the conquest of Constantinople, and they brought with them manuscripts of the Hermetic tradition. This is the first printing of those teachings of Hermes Trismegistus in the original Greek language. So the 1460, translated by Marsilio Ficino, this is the first time they're printed in the original Greek. So we have them here. Printed here in the 16 Max Sparks, sometimes what's referred to as the Hermetic Renaissance.
Which was around that time in the 16th century.
Yep, it sort of really begins in the 1470s with his translations. He dies in 1499. To Ficino, this is a teacher of Moses, and so when this stuff hits the press, it is fire, man. Just absolute. Everyone's just like, "Get this stuff."
When was the Library of Alexandria burned?
So the library was burned several times, sometimes on purpose, sometimes on accident. But what's interesting about the Library of Alexandria is it didn't go away because it was burned. It went away basically because it just got underfunded. We burned the Julius Caesar accident, caught it on fire, but the whole thing didn't burn. But what we know is that over time, if you ever been to Alexandria, we're out there. Alexandria is very humid, and papyrus can survive about anything but humidity. They all disintegrate in about 80 years. And I know this because I've taken a whole papyrus, I've copied out an entire, subjected it to humidity, see what happens, and it disintegrates really fast. And what sadly probably happened is the Library of Alexandria was basically built by the Ptolemies as a flex. They wanted to show off how prestigious they were, so what do you compete on? Compete on everything, right? So what's the big flex? You flex on Ephesus, and you flex on Pergamum, and you flex on Athens. They all have famous libraries. I'm gonna get my library flex on.
The best library.
Like, we're gonna build the biggest and best, right? The Ptolemies are no joke, so they did. Go to war. Governments fund war, they don't fund libraries in the end. And it comes down to it. And so what happens over time, they could systematically stop funding the library, and eventually the library just vanishes.
Which is around what time period it would be happening?
So we know that, so it was founded sometime in the mid-3rd century. We never found it, by the way. We don't know where it was. We know that it was there, but archaeologically, not a shred of the Library of Alexandria has ever been found. I walked around Alexandria in the area that we think that it is, but modern Alexandria is sitting on top of it, and it's not going to get excavated anytime soon. But we know that in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, the Common Era, there was a big library in Rome, and it burned, and they sent scholars to Alexandria to recopy stuff to bring back to Rome. So we know it was still functioning then. So you think, sometimes people think, oh, it had like 400,000 rolls in it. But if you go to the library, for instance, Ephesus, which we know was the 2nd largest library in the world, I've been there. I've been inside that library. It's still there. You can walk it, and you can do some basic math and figure out, okay, a single roll is about how many rolls can fit in the building. And with statues and with everything else, you get a count, right? You can be it's about 20,000 rolls at Ephesus. Best guess about the Library of Alexandria is probably 60,000 rolls, which again is big. It's a big library. But did it contain everything? Probably not. Because the Ptolemies were really interested in Hellenization. They were really interested in showing off how smart the Greeks were, and they really looked down on the indigenous Egyptians. They didn't have a lot positive at all to say about the indigenous Egyptians. So were they translating stuff from Egyptian into Greek? I don't know. I think that it was a very the Greeks were there as part of a colonial venture, and typically colonists don't have a lot of positive say about the things that, because if the people that you're colonizing are somehow more ancient and better than you, then what are you doing here? Yeah. And so I think the Greeks had a bit of a chip on their shoulder about it. But no, when I was in Alexandria, it was it's sort of a harrowing thing. The city's crazy. It's just it's a wide open city. But there was a moment I was walking around, and there sort of, I don't know what happened. Maybe I tuned it all out, or maybe there's a weird calm, and it's like it was here. Like it was here somewhere, and like every scholar in the ancient world, like Christianity was forged in these streets, Gnosticism was forged, alchemy was born. You know, they perfected astrology, like here, somewhere here, in these, you know, and it was a very numinous feeling, you know, and I don't take those moments for granted. I could be an academic, skeptical scholar, but there's something about walking into may have been, and it's a moment for you to sit down and be quiet and see if you can hear them, right? And maybe in that silence, you know, and there's some humility to be had and some wisdom to be gained. But again, a still small voice. That was a really a fun. That was a great trip. I really the modern library of Alexandria also, which was funny because we were going in the modern library of Alexandria, and they have a history of manuscripts museum inside the library, and they have a tour school there from the community, the Jewish community that used to live in Alexandria. And I was looking at it, and I was reading it out loud, and I was like, oh wow, this was the exact portion. It's open to the exact portion where my Hebrew name comes from. So I look down and I see my name, and he was looking back at me, and I'm like,
that's fascinating. I'm curious, when you study such intriguing, fascinating, dense, ancient wisdom texts, Kabbalistic origins, witchcraft, so much of these occult and secret teachings throughout time, and I get this feeling of reverence when you enter lands like that, where the old library of Alexandria was. Where is this balance for you intrinsically of exploring philosophically through thought all of these systems, and where it goes beyond thought into being and your own personal practice and exploration of not only what the legitimacy of these texts are, but how if you have felt called to explore the practices, to attempt some sort of mysticism yourself.
I don't know that I've felt tempted toward mysticism per se, but one thing I can say that these texts and these traditions have had an effect on me is that these are all asking the biggest possible questions.
And the creation of all
that. Where did the existence come from? How do you become like God? What is the most ancient form of primeval wisdom? These are not asking boilerplate questions. These are the biggest questions possible. And there's no way, I think, if you're working over this material long enough, there's no way to not get some sense of awe. Because you have to ask those questions too. You have to sit down, at least I think you do. You sit down and go, okay, why is it that the universe seems structured the way that it is? Like, the Kabbalah says it's structured like that because God spoke language into being. The clue is structure. And I think that if you ponder those questions with any intellectual humility, only deep, this is powerful, there's a lot of awe here. And it's not feeling that, I grew up in the 80s, cynicism and this, and I've never liked that. I've never found that. I don't think, everything's meaningless and stupid. That's always struck me as a false and bad belief. And these texts, and the texts that I study, it's the exact opposite. Every single thing is pregnant with meaning. Like, being is pregnant with meaning if you just look, if you just breathe, if you just listen. And that's a lesson that I take very seriously, that what's apparent to me is not what is. And these guys are right. And this is the thing I love to really bring home about this, is that when Agrippa said that there are occult forces in the universe and we can harness them to increase our dignity, we can gather up like our people, and I can reach out across copper wire and Wi-Fi and help someone along a spiritual or intellectual journey. And he doesn't have to be right in the sense of, I'm capturing the energy of Jupiter into a talisman and doing it. Maybe it's not literally that, maybe it is, I don't know, right? But it certainly is the fact that unseen forces have the possibility to raise our dignity. And I don't take that for granted. And I look at Agrippa sometimes in the, when I get a moment in the evening time myself, and I'm like, You were more right than you could have known. And to give him the credit to say, yeah, like you couldn't have seen it. And it's funny, he admits this in the book. He says, in a letter actually, he says, I never got the illumination I was looking for. I never found it. It never occurred to me. It never happened to me the way that I thought it would. And you can see, so the crestfallen about this. But he said, what I have done is open a gate. And I can point you, so maybe I'll just blow my hands. And I'm like, God, it's not going to do it. It's just, I'm not worthy of it. That's okay. But I opened the gate and you can walk through it. I think we walk through the gate. I'm like, good for you, Agrippa. Like, he's not the sort of fake guru. I have all the answers. He tells you I don't have them. I didn't have the experience I was hoping to have. But I've gathered up everything I can, and I want you to have the chance. And my God, what can we want? As if from a teacher, more than that, to have the humility to admit what they couldn't do, and empower the student to bring it to its fruition. And I think these are the kind of lessons that I get from these guys. And I think that those are lessons that every person, every educator, every scientist, occultist, whatever. These are powerful, powerful lessons that come from this tradition that I think are worthy of and deeply internalizing.
I certainly think we're living in a time where there's just not as much awe as would be good for us, Whether it's the light pollution that stops us from seeing the cosmos and inducing that sense of awe of being both incredibly insignificant in this whole cosmic play, but also incredibly significant for having a conscious experience of it, what a gift that is. I feel the reverence and honor and humility that can be the birthplace of true knowing. It's tough to be able to track the actual impact of that, but it's and you might not even want to, but it's absolutely profound. One thing that I'm just reminded of in this moment is Agrippa's trilemma. And it's very comforting for me to have conversations on this podcast exploring my own ignorance and the various systems throughout antiquity of people also wrestling with their own ignorance and coming up with systems or frameworks. Are you familiar with the Agrippa's trilemma?
I'm not sure which one you're referring to.
This Munchausen trilemma also is referred to Agrippa's trilemma, a foundational philosophical problem in epistemology demonstrating the ultimate proof for any claim. The trilemma is broken down into three unappealing options when attempting to justify a belief. The first is infinite regress, the second is circular reasoning, and the third is dogmatic assertion.
Right. And that makes for an infinite regress. Dogmatic assertions obviously aren't true. They're just assertions that say that God is triune or God is 10 and 1, and that's not true. God proved. And so he says, look, at the end of this problem, the only thing we can do is have faith in revelation, because we know that God has revealed the truth to us, and we have faith in revelation. There's a position called fideism, and actually not lying to us exactly, but if you read the book carefully, he will say, yeah, you can't know anything to certainty of your own with your own mind, but because God has made us, we have access to the mind, believe what the Bible says. But nor is it the idea that by logic and reason alone can you get to the truth of something. It's sort of a weird, religiously inclined skepticism, which is interesting because it's influenced Descartes. And Descartes' own skeptical methodologies, in some sense, a development of Agrippa. And utility Descartes style that I really don't like. That this is where it comes from.
So fast, right? What can you understand about illusory in a sense?
Like evil. Like
fundamentally
matter is evil. Yeah, matter is just like literally evil. So the Gnostics, these Sisyphean, pretty hardcore dualists, they really do think of literally our bodies as prisons, and that the planets radiate fate and trap us here, and they make us ignorant of reality, and they tell us lies about reality, and that's the whole point of Jesus coming here, is to tell us the truth, so we can get right. Prison dies, we can escape, but only if you know that it is in fact a clay prison and you know how to get out. They have all kinds of. Physicists have a much more optimistic view of the human being. They do think that we're in a bad spot, which is to say that our soul did come from the one, from the light, and the light is really all that's real, and that in the cosmic spheres, the radiation of the planets infects our soul with fate, and this fate coming from the zodiac and the stars, this fate kind of traps us here temporarily, and we have amnesia when we get here. We don't remember that we come from the light, and that the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus are to do a couple of things. One of them is to remind us that we come from the realm of the light. Two, it's meant to sort of allow us to exercise these daemons that have infected our soul so that we become free of fate. This is a huge concern in the ancient world. We don't care about fate anymore. Christianity, in some sense, was an antidote to fate. It was like, nope, there's no fate. You just choose to follow Jesus and this fated elements of your soul, and once your soul is purged of those fated elements, then it can reascend either mystical visions, but especially in a post-mortem ascent back to the one, and you sort of go back to being united with the one. If you don't do that, your soul can get trapped down here, and you can go through the cycle of reincarnation, you become a ghost, there's all kinds of bad things that can happen that you don't want to happen. But the Hermetic idea is that you come through theurgy, through astrology, and through alchemy, because that's the mechanism by which the world participates in it, and you become godlike, and in those processes you purge these daemons that have infected your soul at the moment of your birth. What's an example of one of those practices? Music. You know that they did magical music practices. In fact, we have some of their hymns. We have some of their chants. There were these vowel chants. We don't know what they sounded like. There's some speculation about what they sounded like, so we know that they were doing mystical music practices. We also know they were vegetarians, it seems like, because they didn't want to get maybe what we might call bad karma from harming other animals, so they ate bloodless meals. We have some sense that they would do what we might call meditation or contemplation practices, where they would were able to spiritually ascend back up into the spheres and sort of purge some of these. But yeah, we have some glimpses into kind of what they did, but we don't know exactly because these were closed initiatory schools. For instance, this one example of the music practice they had, we only know about it because it survives in the Nagamani library. So it's in Codex 6, which is the strangest of the codices of the Nagamani library. But they don't use talismans as a way of capturing astral power and wielding that astral power in a way that would divert some of this more dangerous.
Is there an object or symbol that you would be familiar with?
So, for instance, if you wanted to appropriate to that, so like gold and silver, we have some instrumental signs and seals that are those little rings attached to symbols. Those are modeled out of the modern occultism that they use since ancient Egypt. So we have some senses of what they did, but again, this was a pretty secretive group of people who were sharing this stuff publicly, right? Be initiated in. And we know that because we have some of the texts from people that have been initiated in that we were never supposed to see, which is kind of neat. The discourse in the 8th and the 9th is meant for really advanced practitioners of what's called the way of Hermes.
So there's a lot of overlap there between alchemy and the Kabbalistic tree of life.
So we know that they were practicing alchemy. The tree of life comes much, much later, the 13th century. But we know they were practicing alchemy. The most famous example of this fusion of alchemy and Hermetic philosophy is an alchemist named Zosimus, who was living sometime in the 3rd or 4th century. What's interesting is we know a lot of early alchemists were women because we know 2 of their names, Maria Hebrea and Cleopatra the alchemist, not to be confused with Cleopatra the 7th. So, interestingly enough, we know that women are being initiated into these mysteries. And Hermes is, of course, associated, like Thoth, with secret knowledge, secret wisdom, and also escorting the soul after death. So unsurprisingly, part of what we're trying to do is taking this idea back to Plato, that Plato even says in the Phaedo that philosophy is preparation for death. Like, we do philosophy not because we're trying to be smart. We're doing philosophy to elevate our souls so that when we die, our souls go back to the one. That idea goes all the way back to Pythagoras and Plato. But what's happening with the Hermeticists is they're actively, most famous book of the Corpus Hermeticum, the Poimandres, is an account by a Hermeticist of this experience, and it is mind-blowing, very, very powerful. They're hearing things, their heads ringing, they're hearing buzzing sounds, stuff that like people that have also had these experiences. Oh yeah, that sounds familiar. I know that. Yeah, I've been there.
It reminds me of what you hinted at earlier. Of course, there are unseen forces that are making whoever's listening to this podcast possible. In a similar vein, there are unseen forces, unicity, or being of light, and our journey is to remember and wake up from that initial amnesia that we come in here with. As you study and see the consilience between some of these disparate systems, I'm just curious for you to steel man this sort of transcendent realm which all of these individuals are speaking about. If you were to make the best case for them, what would be mine? Yeah.
I mean, I think that for me, the best case for it, as much as I could make a case for it, is that the universe is not random. The universe seems to obey rules. Gravitational constant is a very specific number. And if it were just a little bit weaker, right, we wouldn't get stars. Fine-tuning, right? This sort of the question of fine-tuning. And that to me, again, there's lots of hypotheses as to why it could be fine-tuned, right? It could be some natural selection process, not a black hole formation or something. I don't know. I'm not a physicist. I don't care if it's scientific or not. What I'm saying is I don't know if we can test it or not, but it's a reasonable thing to believe. If that's true, right? And again, think about the laws of logic. The laws of logic seem like they are also the laws of mathematics, and it seems like mathematics is a language by which we describe reality with a high degree of precision. That's just strange. But I think we have to admit just how weird that is. And I think about other things like that. I think about, for instance, pi is an irrational number, right? It doesn't terminate, it doesn't end, which means that there are true values of pi, integers between 0 and 9, of every value that goes on for infinity, including all the ones we've never found yet. That means that there are independent truths about pi that are not human mind dependent. They're true regardless of whether we ever find them or not. We never will find them all. Of course we won't. And those kinds of existence, those kinds of transcendentals, that just points in the direction of the possibility, the distinct possibility that there's a transcendental realm of some kind. Whether it's time, realm of forms, whether it's the one, whether it's a realm of the gods, things like fine-tuning, we should take seriously the existence of mind-independent truths about at least transcendentals, like mathematical entities. That if someone posits that God fine-tunes things, then I'm like, I don't know if I believe that, and I'm not sure if there's evidence for it strongly. But you're not being unreasonable. And I think this is the thing the skeptics and believers should be able to unify around, is that the realm of reasonable ideas is a lot bigger than we think it is.
Yeah. And I think the questioning of monotheistic faiths and creationist stories is that it doesn't really answer the question of, okay, if God created the Big Bang, or what preceded God creating, who created God, and it's kind of an infinite regress into who knows where. But it does make you wonder. It does make you wonder. Keep the mind open.
Yeah, and again, I think this is where, I'm not trying to identify myself. I sometimes refer to myself as a post-theist. I'm just not interested in whether or not there are gods. There might be, there might not be. It's like, that's not really going to change my life. An intellectual answer to that question actually doesn't change my life. Right? It's just, that's not how people work anyway.
Yeah, an ontological connection.
Life be transformed by an argument. Like how, again, I think philosophers, and again, I'm pointing the finger at myself because I am one. I think that they have this mistakenly bizarre view that if you make a good argument, it will convince people. People aren't convinced by good arguments. Most people are convinced by experiences, emotions, relationships, right? And so I think that, for me, what matters is that sense of awe, and that sense of meaning that comes from that sense of awe. And sometimes I'm really burnt out or jaded, or I think we all get there, right? We all get that kind of like, ugh. One of the ways that have made the narrative that one is studying these texts and physically having it. That's one thing. But just having a telescope. Like, there's just no, anybody, I mean, I've never met a person who get eyes on the rings of Saturn for the first time and go, eh. I'm like, you got serious depression. Really. So, this is cultivating law. Microscopes and telescopes are great. A lot of micro creatures keeping you around. And that was all we have over again. Yeah. It was the scale of being, they say.
Yeah, so the holonic structure in which we are a living ecosystem and a part of. And you mentioning the telescope on the flip side, it actually makes me think about just if you were to poke at modernity a bit more, you know, and see how the Cartesian and Newtonian way in which we view and try to dissect at times non-rational inquiries are inevitably going to fail because the telescope is designed to see into the physical world, and we're speaking about the possibility of existence of the non-physical world. Or this is what I think Spinoza's dual aspect monism is kind of seeing the one unified force that bifurcates these two areas.
At least two. I mean, you know, there's an infinite numbers. We just happen to interact with two of them.
Yeah.
According to Spinoza. Yeah. I think that they're you know, one of the phrases that religion is answering a certain sort of questions, and science is answering a different sort of questions. And science can do qualitative, can do quantitative analysis, right? You have to be able to falsify stuff, run experiments, you know. But that's just not the way. There's two questions here, or two things to be said. Yeah, so like, you know, again, like the fact that I'm mostly empty space. Right, that I'm mostly empty space. Atoms are mostly empty space. I'm mostly empty space. I don't perceive myself as mostly empty space. Right?
Not even mostly, right?
Yeah.
That's entirely.
Yeah, not at all. And like, that's just true. That's just, you know, like this is true. And you know, or the fact I'm not sitting on something, right? It's just fields interacting. You know, what you do that stuff can make you a little longer. So I think that on the one hand, let's say that I identify as a materialist. And sometimes people think, oh man, that's boring. Like you just think this is just stuff bouncing off each other. Nobody who's interested in materialism can think that anymore. Like, whatever matter is, it's so exotic as to be indistinguishable from spirit.
Yeah, and that matter arising from consciousness or consciousness arising from matter are both equally baffling.
Yeah, it's just like, it's bizarre. We had it both bizarre. And so I think, like, anybody who's seriously committed to materialism, you can be pretty seriously committed to pretty exotic beliefs about reality. Because the quantum world is just the most unintuitive, strange place that exists. And the fact that it decouples and becomes a Newtonian world and doesn't interact with gravity, we don't know either. Like, this is a place where we can cultivate intellectual humility and awe. Not, let me tell you how religion is stupid. Just like Reddit stuff, right? Like, don't be that Reddit guy. And I think on the other side, the spirituality side, the place where I want to sit down with believers, I want to sit down with religious people. I'm religious. I'm a particularly strange form of religion, but I'm a religious person. And what you're talking about some of the time. But the truth is not a thing that I have a monopoly on as a scholar. And the truth is also not a monopoly thing for you as a practitioner. The truth is something that we find in the middle of conversations, of dialogue, dialogos, right? The logos is between us. It's not mine, not yours, not anybody's. It's a thing that happens sort of as we're doing the thing. Truth is a verb.
Yeah.
And I think that when the truth is a verb, it means that I need to hold on to it and then beat people with it because I have a specific methodology I'm using philosophically or scientifically or spiritually or whatever. That when we come to a better understanding that it is a thing that it is a verb done in community. And community of people that don't think like you, that don't practice like you, that don't have the same metaphysics or whatever. That to me is the exciting frontier of this stuff. And sometimes I'll be sitting with, you know, practitioners who are Philippians or they do Enochian magic or Wicca or whatever. And you're like, why do you want to hang out with me? Like you're like a materialist, whatever. I'm like, it's precisely there's no learning when everyone's in the same echo chamber. And so I think this is a place where it's an invitation to curiosity, an invitation to the possibility of actually learning something and having your worldview challenged in a way that you can grow as a human being. And when I read Agrippa, do I agree with Agrippa? No, I don't think I do. But that's a place where it's an granted, they become sort of dogmatic orthodoxies. They're really fossils of thought, actually. And it's a place where I can hopefully grow.
Yeah, it seems like there's this widespread pandemic of Dunning-Kruger, of thinking we know more than we know, and anyone who's actually gone to depth of study realizes that as their circle of knowledge grows to so too does the perimeter of their ignorance that they become aware of, and there's usually humility that is coupled with that, which is I think directly what you're speaking to.
I hope so. I think that's what I hope happens. And again, when I do, I work on esoteric. I think one of the things that one of my favorite things to hear is from practitioners, is from hearing them say, I had no idea that the rabbit hole went that deep. Right? Like, this is my spiritual path that I didn't know X. I'm like, great. Now you have access to a deeper kind of spiritual technology, which is great. I mean, that's like, this is a way of, if I can empower people to make meaning through giving them better access to these spiritual technologies of the past, then again, we're living in a meaning famine. Again, it's everything. It's everything from having practitioners deepen their practice to like the dungeon master getting a cooler role, or the video game guy making a neater, better video game, or whatever. I think this material is the spectrum of who we are. Everywhere from the practicing hermeticist to the video game designer. And I think that's why another reason why this material is so important, because it gives us access to a kind of pool of creative question asking. And I think philosophy does its job best, not when it's trying to beat you over the head with some answer, but it's when it's deepening the kind of question you're asking.
It feels like we have such a fear of being sinful to explore some of the truth of those origins, but I think when people hear the occult in particular, there's this
Satanic panic.
Yeah, satanic panic. And would you be open to actually sharing a bit of your story of your satanic panic?
Yeah,
because this is one of the wildest stories I've heard.
It is, and sometimes I'm like, wow, that really happened to me.
Yeah.
Well, so the word occult is it just means hidden. That's all it means. It means hidden. And so it has nothing. The Greco was a Christian. All these people are Christians or Jews or whatever. So there's nothing satanic about any of it. They thought, no, this is how I should become like Christian Max through the occult. Christian Max. And so that's what they thought they were doing. And I'm like, John Dee's talking to angels not because he's trying to like be evil. He's trying to be like hyper pious.
Yeah, the taxonomy of angels is Aquinas.
Yeah.
Seraphim and all that.
Seraphim is cool. And the guy that committed the school shooting handed me papers and told me, hey, give these to so and so. And there's a lot of things happened after that, but over the course of Satanists were responsible for instigating this horrible crime. And sure enough, 8 days later, I was one of several kids arrested and accused of being members of a satanic cult called the Croft, which I still don't know what that word is or where it came from. And over the course of about a year and a half, there was always a lot of stories that were told about this business of the Croft or whatever. And the judge was just, doing the judge should do. I need to see some evidence of this. And none ever emerged. And slowly the charges were dismissed, and eventually they're all dropped. And this is part of what launched me into the interest in this field. Was I became curious. What is this? Like you guys are talking about the occult, witchcraft, what is this actually historically? And it was interesting to learn, right? We talked about earlier that the witch craze, the witch killings were effectively a moral panic and a conspiracy theory mixed together. And that happened to me. I never want this to happen to anybody else. This is awful. But, I don't say it ruined my life, because people died. Like, people were injured, people were traumatized. But it was a question, at that point, it became, I need to get to the bottom of what this is. And it sort of caused a friend of yours or something new. So it's not new. Same with Luke, what is, and he's still alive, I suppose. I knew it, but distantly. It wasn't like a good friend of mine. And the guy I didn't want to give the papers for wasn't a I was 16 at the time.
8 individuals.
He killed 2 young women, sadly, and he also killed some other before he came to school, and injured several others. And yeah, he did this. I remember being arrested and getting to jail. There's 8 of us, and I didn't even know all the other kids that were arrested. And I'm like, it's really hard to be in a satanic conspiracy. A school shooting, an early school shooting. This is 2 years before Columbine. And maybe blamed for it.
And why? What was the reason for the accusation of that?
So we still don't know
Exactly. For some reason, the cops had some reason to believe that there was.
So Luke, the guy that did the shooting, said that his friend Grant, the guy that I was supposed to get papers to, that he was somehow dealing with demons or something. And it's not clear because when it actually goes to trial, very little of this demon stuff really becomes the focus of the investigation anymore. And it's interesting because once it was all over, once I talked to the police and we're dropping the charges, it's like, what a cruel thing to do to want to kids to accuse them of a pretty horrifying crime, but also to the families of the victims to be told by the police, so a satanic conspiracy is responsible for the death of the murder of your child. Oh, sorry. It's like, it's grotesque. These poor parents are grieving and they're being led to believe that this thing happened, and they're like, oh yeah, there's no evidence actually that it ever happened. And this is sort of a larger pattern of the satanic panic with the 80s, where they would interrogate small children and ask them leading questions, and then the kids would ultimately concoct wild stories about how Chuck Norris was taking them into secret tunnels underneath their daycare and doing terrible things to them. And of course, there were no tunnels, and it ruined people's lives. And you have these satanic panics that emerge in the West Memphis City. Danny Nichols and those guys also accused of being part of it. Danny Nichols was on death row for quite so many years. And eventually they're just like, oh yeah, sorry, it didn't happen that way. They would go in the bathroom and do all this bad stuff. And it turns out it was just a bunch of straight guys actually harming children. And so when you see these conspiracy theories, it's not the first time. Anti-Semitic conspiracy theories are still all over the place. And so it's when you go back in time and go, oh yeah, we're just repeating the same mistakes. And that's why I said it worries me the most, is like, this is a moment in history and we didn't. And part of the reason why I cover, for instance, the witch trials. Like, we're gonna do this again.
And that's such a wild, I'm sure, inspired and has played a pivotal role in your search for meaning around that, and then also seeing the witch trials. And what do you make of that moment now in your life? Because that's like quite a traumatic thing to go through, of course, more traumatic for all the families and individuals that were implicated in it, but that's a very formative experience as a 16-year-old.
Yeah, it's one of those moments where you get rattled away, like you're wide awake in a way that, like, everything's a lie. You're being accused of, very serious crime. You go away forever. And all of a sudden you go from being a normal kid to your life is upside down. And there's obviously something about trauma that rattles you awake. And I think that what happened in that sense was like, I never want to go back to sleep. Like, I just never gonna live a normal life. And like, that's okay, right? Like, that normal is off the menu now. So the question is, how are you going to live a life that is not going to be ordinary? And it was just like clear to me, crystal clear to me. Last family, none of my family ever went to college. It's first generation college, and I was like, you have to make it in this. What is? And so I took what was at some level kind of a thing that was used against me as a weapon, and mostly born out of ignorance and fear, right? Fear is always when the ignorance, the vacuum of ignorance is always filled with fear. And so when I saw that happen to me, there was 2 options really. You can shame and blame. Why did you do response. It's a natural, reasonable response. I think if you end in that place, you're gonna have a pretty bad life. The question was, I can take that, or I can say, let's reroute all that pain and all that negativity, and let's do the antidote to what happened. And the antidote is education. Right? So let's blow the lid off. After that, my goal for many years was, let's get into this stuff. Let's do it transparently. Let's make it accessible. Because if we get the education on it, it's really hard to be like, oh, you're an occultist, you worship the devil. You're like, that's not what the occult is. It's just education. Yeah. So, you can have a chip on your shoulder, or you can fix the problem. It's light a candle or curse the darkness kind of thing. Exactly the ways that I found myself hurt in the world.
I'm glad I asked. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense, and I'm curious how that has transformed occult avenues, and you clearly wouldn't have continued if you didn't have a genuine love for perhaps the awe that these things bring you, or like the. I want to ask you a question around. So when you look at the witch trials, right? There's sort of been like kind of like a modern resurgence of pagan rituals and like women just reclaiming the wildness of being a woman. There seems to be this inherent feeling across the board that there is, because there are historical, systematic persecutions of women being connected with nature, having even emotional imbalances or loneliness, to the other extreme, which is that there's this sort of self-conscious fear of women and a lot of humans depending on what lineage they come from, of being persecuted for being able to express who they are and for exploring these things. Like there's a deep inherent feeling of unsafety. And I'm curious, what do you think is the reality of that sort of generational trauma that is having some sort of expression into the day we find ourselves in? And what do you make of the energy sort of carrying on in resonance of that period into today's time, and how it shifts how we think, how we feel, the paradigms in which we look through, specifically around the suppression of the feminine?
In the Middle Ages, there was a sense of what's called the Great Chain of Being, right? That everything begins, God created everything in a big chain. Everything's connected. And as you go down the chain of being, things become worse and worse. So angels are pure, and below angels are people, and below people are humans, and below humans are minerals and stuff. And the chain of being is about value. And in that chain of being, it's conceptualized that men were created first. Adam was created before Eve, and therefore it's of higher value, and women are therefore derived person or a male person, usually a male person. And the womb is just a passive field in which the little homunculus is what it's called. It goes in, and depending on the condition of the womb, you get it produces a male or a female person or a monster, in some cases from Aristotle. So there's a long history going to Aristotle, Plato, actually, but when it comes to Christianity, of the feminine as derivative is not fully equal, is somehow less than down the chain of being. And that's just had catastrophic consequences for the development of the Western world. Half of the population is less than. And of course, when you add racism to that in the 18th century, this idea, and this can get kind of squirrely, is that the idea is that you can descend the chain of being and you can ascend the chain of being. But I think that if human dignity doesn't mean human dignity, it just means dude's dignity, then we have a big problem. And that's what it's traditionally meant. It's just really meant means dignity. And I think that these emergence of philosophies that not only distinguish the by men is that, oh, these women are just, are the reason I think they were, it's just drugs, it's right now. I'm not an expert in spirituality, to be very clear, but I see empowered women doing this kind of spiritual work and also academic work, by the way. Leading scholars right now on the Zohar, those who important text in the Kabbalah, they're all women, right? They're all women. So it's a moment where we're seeing.
I am a human being, and I do not want to work 10-hour days for the rest of my life. I want to explore nature and be free.
I'm much more excited about the generation younger than me and my generation, or where the ship sailed on us. But the younger generation, they really leading the charge on democratizing scholarship, democratizing spirituality along exactly those axes that have historically been so marginalized. So I think that it's just unlocking all this potential. So I'm pretty excited to see it. You know, it's again, like for me in my tradition, the Zohar is the text that I hold to be the most central and most holy, next to the Torah. But to know that traditional women were completely locked out of even being able to study, and now knowing that the leading scholars are almost universal women, it's like finally the ship is getting right. And the ship is slowly right. It's being hit right. So that's exciting to me. And it's not exciting to me because of some kind of, the right word is, like performative revenge, kind of like, the dudes are going to get there. It's that good scholarship, that spirituality comes from a plurality of voices. Again, we were talking about earlier, the more like the thinner things are, it's just one charismatic guy in the room telling everybody what to believe. We know where that goes. Like we've seen it. Like we know that song and dance. We know that it ends the way that it ends. The more we can democratize the voices, you don't do it just because you're like woke or whatever. You do it because this is actually where real creativity happens. It happens to find the most exciting stuff is when I'm sitting across the table from a person who deeply disagrees with me, and yet they see we share a deep respect for what we're doing, and it's precisely in that difference where we can begin to do the dialogue, we do this dialogue, and that's where I think we can begin to do truth as a verb. Because otherwise, if it's just another weird guy like me reading Agrippa, is it really that we're really going to get creative ideas? It's just, I don't think it's going to happen. So I think that's the place where I'm excited. It's about the emergence of a much more democratized spirituality, much more democratized access. And again, for me, education is all about access. The fact that I get emails from people in Brazil who are like, look, I can't afford to be on your Patreon or whatever. But
is it okay if I share my creative trauma?
Yeah, I think esotericism, because that's exactly the point. It's not about, first of all, people getting access to stuff. It's about the person in Brazil who really wants to learn about Middle Platonism or whatever. And otherwise they have no access to college, they have no access to this, but they have fun. And now, like immediately and for free, they have access to it. To me, that's the magic, that's the ticket, that's how we incrementally, yes, but that's how education can get put in people's pockets and we can begin to change the world.
Makes me think about what you referenced earlier, how humanity currently finds itself on a knife's edge, and we have something that we have never had before, which is the ability to share ideas like this instantaneously across the globe. What a gift. Also, if we don't make use of it to democratize education across the board, what a curse it would be, to fumble that gift. It would be a tragedy.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And again, I can speak a little bit what I'm doing, right? But I look at a lot of public intellectuals who are doing something like this, and I think we are in a moment. And I've been reading a lot of the letters of Marcelo Fitzgerald. When you think about the Renaissance, the thing that just happened. But the Renaissance happened. The Renaissance didn't just happen. People were self-conscious of the fact, and maybe in a misguided way, of the fact that we lived through a period of good stuff. We had it now. Can you imagine the moment where like Plato is just available to you for the first time? Like as a culture. They had the Timaeus and Latin. Nothing else. I mean, if you've tried using like algebra or multiplication with Roman numerals, it's terrifying. There's just a moment in the 15th century where they look back, and they were a little judgy about it, to be sure, that's fine. They look back and said, that was bad. Look at what we have access to now. We need to subconsciously rebuild civilization. Along these texts, along these ideas, we need to rebuild it. The Renaissance didn't happen. It was self-consciously willed into reality by people who understood that they were in a very particular, specific mode in history. And we see this in Ficino's letters. Ficino is very clearly aware of the fact that something important is happening, and he is responsible for driving it forward. He has to do it, that's not else to do. And I think that we're in a moment now where we're coming out of a period, I think, or maybe at the very end of a period, I think, of intellectual decadence and intellectual stupor, where universities had exclusive access to educational, it was not an education, no shame to universities, but we were coming out of a period where, or coming into a period where I do think, and I know through the lens of like before returning, and the more that you look through history, you see these cycles. Do you think we're at the birth of the Renaissance? We want to be. We have to be. We have to be. It's not, it's not, Hegel, the other thing of Hegel is sort of a mechanical theory of history where this party against that party gives rise to a new thing. It's a very mechanical reading of Hegel. Hegel didn't think it was mechanical. Hegel thought this is consciousness rising to levels of consciousness because of this historical circumstance where that consciousness finds itself. It's not mechanical at all. It's like people being like, yeah, I'm here, and things are different than they were back then, and I need to change the way that I think about the world and operate in the world. The Renaissance won't happen. It'll be made, or it won't be made. And I think that's not a place where, it's not a place where by arrogance, oh, I can lead the Renaissance. That's not it. That's not going to do it. It's in that choice to raise oneself up.
Dr. Jordan.
It's accepting your responsibility. All right? Sartre said that the real freedom is choosing what you'll be responsible for. That's real freedom. Freedom is not like I have freedom to veg out and watch TV all day. That's not real freedom. That's bad faith. Real freedom is choosing what you're going to be responsible for. And I think that at this moment, we're in a moment where if we choose to be responsible for a Renaissance, we can have one. I do think we are at a specifically weird juncture. And I think they're exhausted with universities having monopolies on education and knowledge production. They're exhausted with bad information. I think people are forever that it does, because people are desperate for good, reliable information where they're not being sold junk and being told, oh yeah, this is the real enlightenment. It's giving $9.99 a month and blah, blah, no, you can't do this. Here's the book, go do it yourself. I have no ability to fix you. You just take responsibility for yourself. And I think my little part in pushing this forward. So, I always urge people, if you've never read the letters of Ficino, they're really worth reading, because they're the writings of Asian. I need God's help to read this. And he only began translating this stuff in his 40s. So even if he's like, I'm 45, can't do it. Yeah, Jim said, no, it hasn't. But was in his 40s where he ever translated a single word of Greek. And he was conscious of the fact of what he was doing. And so, and again, it's not about tuning your own horn. It's not hubris. I can change the world. It's that I am responsible for the world. My world is my responsibility. And I think that we can take, as an educator or whatever, physicists or public intellectuals, we can all push the agenda forward spiritually, philosophically, intellectually. And if we do that, great. I think we're at a moment now where the public at large is interested in a different conversation.
What words of advice do you have for people to examine how the examining of what you are drawn to helps you clarify what it is that you want to choose responsibility for?
I am nostalgic.
We can do it. It just takes work. As a community. And if there's any antidote to meaninglessness and loneliness, it's communities of genuine, deep reflection.
So before we close out, we have a closing tradition where people from our online community send you some questions, and that's always fun to see what they ask. Shannon from California asks, what one personal experience throughout your life has been the most meaningful in regard to a belief in or contemplation of the existence of magic?
Wow. So I don't know that I much of like believe in magic.
The contemplation and
And contemplation for sure. I do a lot of contemplating about magic.
Can we have a conversation about the existence of magic?
One of the books were real. Right? Like I think we have this sort of like Merlin has a magic book or Sorcerer's Apprentice or we have like I think a cartoon understanding of sorcery and when you realize that those are real. Like I've handled manuscripts, medieval manuscripts of like necromancer's manuals. You know, and it's a moment where this is really real. And you'll see things that I can't explain, but I'll say something like, I did this incantation and you know, and it smells like turning invisible, finding great treasure and things like that, raising the dead, making the dead speak.
yeah, whatever kind of magical things or words,
So detecting thieves, yeah, there was a basically there was a law enforcement back in the day, so like detecting thieves,
or
things
like
like that.
phenomenon.
Yeah, there's some remote viewing. It's like a thing that exists. Like the last phase of Wicked Magic, the John B. Magic, was basically remote viewing. It's a way of spying on the world through angel magic. But for me, it was finding these books and realizing that they were real, and then being very disappointed in only translating them because most people look down their nose and go, "Oh, magic, that's silly. I don't believe in that." Right? This is a superstition. It sort of becomes unworthy of translation, complete translation. This has changed, of course, since basically the 90s. It's slowly starting to change. And there was a moment where, say, a kid in the candy shop, you just like, what's fascinating is that we're now beginning to see, for instance, one of the things in this emerging in this field is that we're asking questions who wrote these books, and the answer emerges is very interesting. Who knows how to do rituals? Who knows how to
Your answers are safe with me.
who knows how to get access to the implements that you need to do this kind of magic? And the answer
Who knows how to get access to the other dimension?
that's the only two people that could have done this. And what's developed now is that
Follow me for more portals.
talking to each other across cities. And this is how it emerges what's called the Jericho Necromantic Underground.
I'm an EDM artist.
Networks of clerics passing magical secrets to each other that by day they're a normal priest and by night they're like trying to find buried treasure using some demons and stuff. So it's an extremely fascinating world where basically in the past 20 years scholars have
The world is extremely fascinating.
network of sorcerers all through Europe, all communicated, all coming to books. And now it's like people like me and other people that are actively in Europe talking this book matches this man writing this book, which means they trade books for a while. And
Evil has been defeated.
this book, which means they would match this legend, or putting the network together. So we're beginning to get some sense of who owned what, who's reading what, who's copying what libraries these things in. And so
Who is copying who and for what reason?
we're finding the sorcerers. This isn't just like made up Merlin stuff. These are real people, and we're finding them. And so now, I have at home, I've handled 16th century, 17th century books of magic, and get eyes on them, get them translated, can get the watermarks and the paper tested, put them who are now unlocking their secrets. Another great thing, it's sort of adjacent to magic, it's alchemy. So one of the most exciting things happening in the world of alchemy right now is that chemists are now beginning, and chemists are beginning alchemy seriously as
I love and unconditionally respect you, George.
experiments in labs.
Yoga Nidra is an ancient art and science.
And one of the
Yoga Nidra is an ancient art and science that takes you on a guided meditative journey through.
and we recreate the alchemical experiment, and it does a thing that matches one manuscript. We now know that the alchemy, doing the alchemy, now tells us which manuscript was what. So, like, just we're at the cutting edge of
Swami Satyananda Saraswati.
There's that. But also, we can even correct texts based on this. So we're really in an exciting period of time when it comes to the forensic recreation of magic, forensic recreation of alchemy. And again, this is all just a really, really fun. Let's take this stuff as seriously as we can.
Let's take this stuff seriously.
What do you think about things like the thirst?
What do you think about translating this?
There's something inherently in us that deeply wants to believe these hidden teachings, secret teachings, natural.
What do you know about the secret teachings?
Some people learn about it. I'm curious, what do you think is in us?
What do you believe?
This, I'm sure it's probably many things.
Is there more than just us?
Do you believe there's a possibility we lost our that we can
Have you read A Course in Miracles?
existence in reality too? Yeah.
Are you aware of the existence of miracles in reality?
Actually be real in some way.
Actually, if you're real, you might understand this.
If the philosopher's stone, every chemical transmutation was ever possible in cars. But why do we go
The yoga practice and ritual of self-care and holistic healing uses a collection of time-tested techniques to help the practitioner experience a mind state often referred to as peace beyond words. Yoga is a practice of non-doing. We need only to listen to the meditation instructions that guide us through a systematic and easeful letting go of tension in all the layers of our being so we can rest completely with our truest nature.
We want to be able to access that world, and we may access it for a range of reasons, some but you're not so great.
You want to be able to access
That's
this.
all there is. And that underneath
Your desires are important. Your desires are important.
and we get access to it and like become godlike.
Your desires are important.
Or have magnetic powers or I don't know whatever, right? We all have a deep crave for that.
Your desires,
Um,
all of our thoughts.
think about sort of the most banal
Something else.
magic in medieval times. Really
Something different.
history is like finding buried treasure. Who doesn't want to like put a spade
Beautiful times.
and we come out with gold coins?
The same thing every day for the rest of your life.
It's just like the doomed desire to find.
You want to go forth and claim your destiny.
Every time people answer it has some kind of.
Everybody plays the same game.
So I think that the deeply human desires to unearth
Peace is not something you wish for, it is something you make, something you are, something you do, and something you give away.
power that insulates us from the boredom of normal life.
John Lennon.
I guess you have to ask like you secretly do magic, right?
I am underneath the looking glass.
If I secretly did magic, would I be
I am finding secrets everywhere.
if I could like secretly like put a Powerball number.
Return to reflect here often. Notice the fullness of your breath as you breathe. Pause and observe how your breath goes all the way in and then goes all the way out. It's just not fair. Life can be pretty horrifying sometimes. Don't worry, I am here to listen to you and talk to you and help you get through it.
Yeah, there's
I hope you have an effortless and easy day.
there's the dual experience of the light and the dark for Nolan. Not all of it.
When you start, yeah, we all can design by should. That's one lesson we just don't want to learn as human beings. Can design by should. You know, if you don't have that moment, the Oppenheimer moment, whenever we like realize when we split that up, Oppenheimer
Stop.
watch oh my dear. And now we have this
Oh my dear.
and like
Dear.
so there's a moment where you
Oh my dear.
I hope you'll one day reach the maturity and realize you can't design by should.
Am I?
Like a place where we see that happening, where there's, Rupa is an example of someone who I think has a very high level of what I'll call magical maturity. He really sees magic as a means to become godlike, and by godlike means good, to raise our dignity and become godlike, all creative, beautiful, positive ways. But for Edgar and Rupa, there was one beggar back here smoking in the dark, man, like that, and the rest of it later. And surprise, surprise, right, this is the gamut of the human experience. Are there schools of magic currently that you're aware of, or that you would presume are underground currently? Have to be.
Magic.
I get emails that are always very visualizing, like, their gas. I've been invited to so many underground magical occult orders that I lose track, and it can't be like three guys, you know, that have a some of which are pretty frightening, that are interested in bad stuff, interested in keeping power and manipulating people, manipulating politics. And I've seen some evidence of their existence. It's always hard to know, right? Because are you looking at the tip of the iceberg, or are you
I
looking
love and respect you, Jordan. I give you all my unconditional faith and surrender.
where I elected not to sell stuff to people? Just like they're out there, and things like the Order of Angles and stuff like that, which are pretty horrifying organizations.
Do you like it?
That self-consciously building magic through human sacrifice and child abuse, God forbid. But they're out there. And,
Close your eyes.
What you mentioned earlier around, when you look at Harry Potter, the Marvel movies, you look at the modern Hollywood and speaking, and why do we feel? What do you feel like those films and stories are reigniting in us archetypally and drawing out in a sense? What is the deeper pull beyond just the excitement of a well-produced thing? Just not speaking to something perennial and aspirational in the human spirit.
I think they're doing the work that it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.